Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Standing in the Dark, a weekly podcast session interviewing stage managers on Broadway, off-Broadway, and in regional theaters. Today, we are with the long-running queen, Mary Beth Abel of Wicked. Hello, MB.
Hello, Rachel.
How are you doing today, MB?
I am very well. I'm excited to do this with you.
All right. Well, MB, how did you get started in theater and in stage management in general?
In stage management, I got started at the Pittsburgh Civic Light Opera, which is my hometown is Pittsburgh, and I had applied for an apprenticeship there and was offered the apprentice to the director for a summer season. And at that time, Pittsburgh Civic Light Opera did 6 musicals in 6 weeks, and everything was built there. It was a really exciting time, and that was sort of where I got the theater bug, where I was like, I really like this, I like doing this, and I met, of course, a number of people from New York, and they convinced me to come to the city and try stage managing. They saw something in me that I had no idea what it was, and I was like, okay, I'll try it. So that's how I got started.
How'd you get into theater?
When I was in college, I was pre-med, and then I decided I was going to do pre-law. And I was taking these classes, all these logistics classes and political science classes and philosophy courses. And my sort of fall to was theater. And as I started taking more theater classes, I realized that it was sort of there was something there. I didn't really particularly like the acting aspect of it. I was, I had to perform as some of my credit was due in performing, but I found my niche really sort of in directing and putting pieces together. And basically what ended up happening is by my sophomore year, I realized that this is what I wanted to do, but how could I incorporate this, and was there any kind of a career in this? And I fortunately had a pretty great advisor, and also my parents were very supportive of the fact that why can't you do something like this? And so I switched majors and actually did a special major through the school, which was a communication arts, dramatic arts, political science degree that I went for as a BA. And I developed my own major in order to incorporate everything that I really wanted to do. So what I did is I took a political piece, Clifford Odets, oh my gosh, now I'm not even going to remember the name of it. But it was a Clifford Odets piece about the taxi cab driver strike in New York City. And I directed it and filmed it. And that was what I did my thesis on. And that was that after that, it was that thesis actually that when I presented to Pittsburgh Civic Light Opera executive director in the interview, that was the reason that he wanted me to do the apprenticeship, because he was impressed by the thesis. So that was kind of an interesting tie-in. And then having met those people at the Civic Light Opera and having them see something in me and bring me to New York, it was like, obviously, thank goodness I found my path.
All right, we're back. Technical difficulties, everyone. Sorry about that. All right, so just real quick, I have a note over here about how your mom threw a big dinner for everyone at the Civic Light Opera, and this is just a story that needs to be told.
Okay. Well, let me just tell you that prior to my getting that job at Pittsburgh Civic Light Opera, I lived in a house full of 4 boys who were older than me. My mother and I and my grandmother lived on our 3rd floor. So it was a very big group of people, and our house was always filled with excitement and, drama and this sort of thing. So my grandmother at the time happened to be an elderly woman who traveled daily by bus to Pittsburgh. And she would go back and forth to Pittsburgh, and what she would do is she would go to the museums and these sorts of things, and she would actually, she was an artist, and she would sit on the bus or in restaurants and sort of draw people. So this is what she would do. And so every day she would come home from Pittsburgh, and she would tell us about her day and show us her pictures. In the meantime, my mother had found this article in a local rag that was about this apprenticeship in Pittsburgh. And she said to me, you should apply for this. This is exactly the kind of thing that you've been looking for. And I was like, yeah. And of course, I put it off. And the last day that it was due, my grandmother came home from Pittsburgh, and my mother looked at her and said, you have to take this application down there. It's due tomorrow. Do you mind going down to Heinz Hall and doing this? My grandmother was like, no, I'll take it down. So my grandmother took this thing down and handed it directly to the secretary there. And it was about 3 days later that I got the call to go in for the interview. Okay, fast forward to we're into the season at Pittsburgh Civic Light Opera, and my mother says to me, I would like you to invite all of the creative team to dinner on whenever they can all make it, and I want to invite them all and bring them all over. So I said, okay. So my mother was Italian, and so she made a huge Italian dinner, and she was a good Italian cook. And I had the director, the choreographer, the set designer, the lighting designer. They were all there, invited to this dinner, and of course our entire family was there, so it was a big group of people. And in the middle of eating and drinking, my mother says looks at all of them and says, so what are you going to do for my daughter? And I was mortified, but they all looked at each other and they were like, she needs to come to New York. And my mother said, well, how are we going to work this out? And so basically my mother kind of like forced their hand. But it was a wonderful, it was a wonderful thing that she did, because from that, the lighting designer, the musical director, and the director pooled their resources. And within 4 weeks, I was living in an apartment in New York City, and I was doing whatever any of these three people needed to have done in terms of their careers. And what I mean by that is, like, the musical director was also a vocal coach, of course. That's what he would do, on the side. And so I began to meet all of his clients, and because he would be teaching and I would set up the appointments. Same thing with the director. She was directing. She would do one-on-ones and she would do pieces. And so I was meeting all these people, and the lighting designer would take me to any of the things that she was doing. And at that time, she was the associate on several Broadway shows. And so I was meeting people like crazy, and that was seriously, the networking from that is what continued to get me jobs. But it all stemmed from that dinner that my mother threw.
And once you got to New York and you picked up these little jobs, how did that turn in from little jobs to larger jobs?
Once again, I think, already we've talked about this. Like, I'm a firm believer in, like, you're in the right place at the right time. And for me, that could not be more true, just in terms of, like, my grandmother taking that resume, me getting the job, me meeting these people, and then getting to New York. And at the same time, what was happening is that these directors, the director and the musical director and the lighting designer, were getting more work. And it just so happened that the musical director landed the first national company of Cats as the musical director. And when he got onto that company, there were 3 stage managers, of course, that had been hired. And within, I think, like 3 to 6 months, they were losing a stage manager. And so he was talking to the PSM and said, look, I've got this girl, I know she'd be great. She's got her equity card, she got it at Pittsburgh Civic Light Opera, and he said, I just want you to interview her. And so I went and interviewed with the PSM, and, fortunately, he hired me. And that is literally, once I got that job, everything just took off from there. It was once landing that national tour, that was sort of my ticket into Broadway.
And I think when we were discussing this last time, how you were saying that you had never called a show, and your music director was like, no, say you have.
Yes. Should we really say this? I guess so. Yeah, look, it's the truth, and that's exactly what happened. It's like, this musical director, who was a dear friend of mine, said, look, if he asks you if you've called the show, he said, I know you're going to be able to do that. He said, so just say yes, you've called shows and you know how to do that. He goes, and I will teach you. And the fortunate thing about this situation was that I could follow music. I was a piano tinkler. I was never and I also had played the trombone. So I could read music, but I was not one. I would never say to you, "Oh, I'm a musician," because that's not what my forte is. But what happened is that when I was given the calling book from Cats, it was done to all of these counts. There were counts like 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, 2, 3, 4, that kind of thing, all the way down all these pages. And I'm looking at this thing going like, what is this? And the musical director said to me, we're going to transpose the whole thing and we're going to put it on the score. And you'll be able to call from that. And I was like, oh, okay, great. And so he taught me literally before I was, when I found out that I had been hired, there was like a lag period, I think about like 6 or 8 weeks before this other stage manager was leaving. And I literally went to Boston and lived with the musical director for those 6 weeks and learned how to call a show off the score. So by the time I got there to learn the show, I already knew it. So, yes, I lied my way into my first job.
I mean, if you have listened to other podcasts, you will hear that is the first thing Peter Lawrence said. He also lied on his first job as well. So, you're not alone.
I'm so glad to know that, seriously. Because sometimes I'm like, should I be telling this story? But listen, there's, look, the thing is, if I didn't think I could have done that, I would have never gone through with the lie. But when he explained to me what it meant to call a show and what that was, that was like what was happening, I was like, oh yeah, I can see myself doing that. But if it had been something like, you have to climb a mountain, there's no possible way that I would have lied about it. You know what I mean? I'm like, no, sorry, I am not physically fit to climb a mountain.
All right, so you landed Cats. How long were you on Cats for?
I believe I was there 3 or 4 years. I think maybe probably 3 years. And then the new big musical was coming out, and that was Les Miserables. And everybody was talking about it. It was the big hoo-ha. And everyone was interviewing for it. Everyone was being considered, so on and so forth. And I just, I never really thought about leaving Cats. I knew that I think at the time Les Mis was opening, I believe that National, we had an end date. And so we knew we were coming to a close. But anyway, I got a phone call. What happened with Cats is that the wardrobe supervisor on Cats was Adelaide Lorino. And she was, at that time, Cameron McIntosh, and she had a very good relationship. And so she was the one who she would frequently come out to the first National of Cats to, check in and that sort of thing. And I met her at that point over the years that I was there, and she was the one who recommended me. And so I got a call, and I went in for an interview, and the rest is history.
How long were you on Les Mis for?
I was with Les Mis for 13 years.
13 years?
Yes, yeah. I started out there as the second assistant, and within 6 months, they moved me to the PSM. And then we had an unfortunate event where the production supervisor passed away, and they moved me into that supervisory position. And so it was one of those jobs that was so incredible that, I'll never experience anything like that again. I can't imagine, because I was in the right place at the right time. And it was, and I ended up, being able to stage manage the Broadway company and take care of that, and then supervise all of the other companies that were running at the time. And it was a challenge, and it was wonderful. It was just a great experience, and it was wonderful to work for really, really smart and really exciting. The excitement of that. Like somebody said to me at one point, you'll ride a wave of a producer, or you'll ride a wave of something, and I caught that wave right at the right time. I caught that Cameron McIntosh wave, because his shows just started. They hit. They were fantastic. We tried to keep them in good shape, and they lasted a long time.
How was it to be around for the rise of Cameron McIntosh?
It was incredible, and I mean, I think that like he had already made his way on Broadway, but you know, he had done several things prior to Les Mis, Phantom, and Saigon. But those, like, to be involved in those three at the same time, all on Broadway, it was it was incredible. It was like, you know, it was just one of those things where I would always take a step back and go like, how did I get here? Like, how lucky am I that I'm working for this company? And he's a wonderful producer, a wonderful guy, and it was just one of those things where, you know, you felt like the wonderful thing about working for him was that he had a trust and in all of his employees. You know what I mean? He trusted the fact that, look, you know what you're doing, I'm going to let you do what you need to do. And he would only step in when he felt there was some kind of a necessity for that, or if we felt we needed him. And it was great. I can't say enough about him.
So you went from musical to musical. Did you ever dally in plays at all? Actually,
you know, it's so funny you're saying that, because I remember when I was leaving Les Mis, because I had a child, I sort of felt like, you know, I've never done a straight play. It would be so fascinating to do a straight play. And I don't even remember, I don't honestly remember what happened, but I ended up meeting another really great producer, Julian Schlossberg. And he was doing, I think at the time, Adult Entertainment, which was an off-Broadway piece. And they called me in. I don't even know how they got my name or where that came from. But they called me in for an interview because the stage manager was leaving. And so I went down and I did this off-Broadway gig for him, and then several years passed or whatever. I don't even remember. It's you know, after a while, like, it just becomes a blur because it's been 35 years and I can't believe that. But anyway, I then got a call from him because he was going to be producing Sly Fox. And I was so excited because it was going to be on Broadway. It was a straight play, and it had Richard Dreyfuss. And I was like, oh, great, a straight play, I'll do this. So I knew nothing about the piece. I had but I was like, yeah, I'll do this. This will be great. And of course, I get the script, and there's like 18 characters, and then I get like the specs on it, and there's like a turntable and a turtle, and there are, you know, and I find out it's a farce, and I'm like, this is going to be like a musical. It's going to be that big, and it was a lot of excitement and a lot of work, but you know, we took away the musical aspect of a musical, and you ended up with this group of you know, we had an incredible cast. And so what I learned on Sly Fox was that, you know, what the difference between handling like musical dancers and singers to actors and those personalities, you know, stars and actors. So that was a really great, to me, it is not, it's no less work, you know. I mean, they both have their needs. And I mean, I often would fantasize, well, maybe I could just get some play that I could, you know, because I've heard stage managers go, oh yeah, I call the lights up at the top of the act and the lights down at the end of the act, and that's it. And I'm like, how? Like, who does that? Why can't I get one of those? You know, but and that's kind of like my naivete about it was, I was like, okay, this is going to be like a really easy show, you know. No, it wasn't, but it was. You know, I always say, careful what you wish for. And although I loved doing it, and I think the only other straight play I've done on Broadway was at Cyrano de Bergerac, right before I came to Wicked. And that, again, it was another one of those. That was a fantastic, the experience of a play. It's just so the entire attitude and the entire temperament is different from a musical theater piece. And that's what I love. That challenge I loved dealing with. So, you know, who knows? Maybe there's another play in my future. I would love to do that. Yeah.
Do you hear that? All producers listening? MB wants another play. So Cyrano was the last thing you did before Wicked.
Yeah.
How long have you been at Wicked?
Wait, 9 years? I think March was my 9th year here. Yeah.
Here.
Yeah.
And how did you get started on Wicked?
how did I get started? Again, this is one of those things where I was, it's so funny. The guy that was leaving, the PSM who was leaving, was actually one of my, I think he had interned with me at Fosse, and then we had moved him into a stage management position at Fosse. So when the PSM, when I left Fosse, the PSM that took over there was doing Wicked. And then he left Wicked, and this fella had moved up into his position. And so when this guy wanted to leave, they were, of course, canvassing and, going through resumes and calling people and that sort of thing. And the PSM, from what I understand, I think he even told me this, said when he saw my resume come across, he was like, this is who we need to hire. And so I got a phone call and was asked to consider, coming in to meet with the supervisor. And I said no. I had no interest in doing it. I had just come off of Cyrano, and I really at that point went, oh my God, this would be so great if I could get another play. And so I sort of had my thoughts were going on in that vein. And I didn't want to do a musical, nor did I really want to do a long-run musical. It had already been up for 4 years. I think it was coming into its 5th anniversary or something. And I was like, I didn't think I really wanted to do that. And so basically what ended up happening is after 4 or 5 phone calls, the supervisor said, well, will you at least come in so I can meet you? Because, now that we've spoken and I know who you are, so on and so forth. I said, yeah, I'll come in and we'll meet. And so when I came in, he was a really great guy. It was a very comfortable interview. And basically, I said to him, what happened? I said, no one wants the job. Is that why you're coming back to me for the 5th time? And I'm sure that's exactly what it was, but of course he was not going to admit that. And so he said, just think about it. And ironically, that afternoon when I had come to meet him, the choreographer and the associate choreographer were rehearsing, and I had worked with both of them on Sweet Charity. So I saw them, and they were like, you have to do this, you have to do this. So there was that kind of sort of frivolity going on. So anyway, by the time I got home that night, after having seen the set, seen the company on the set, because I'd never seen the show, talking with the supervisor, I said to my husband, maybe I'm looking like a really good thing. Maybe I should really take a look at this. Our son is I think our son was just going to go into high school. And I said, we do have money saved for college, but wouldn't it be nice if? And so my husband said, yeah, well, he goes, maybe what you ought to do is, go and see the show and see what it's all about. And I said, I don't know. I said, I think I'm just going to take the job. So I called and I said, look, I would be willing to do it. And so that's how it transpired. And honestly, again, this is what I say. This is why I'm such a firm believer in God, and that is because I really believe had the supervisor Tom not been persistent, I would not be here. And I'm glad he was persistent, because this has been one of the greatest. If I have to compare anything to my time on Les Mis, I couldn't ask for a better show and a better group of people to deal with. So,
So from turning down the show 4 to 5 times and telling them that you'd give them a year and it's been 9, what has kept you with this company and in this building?
You know what? This is what I found when you called me the long-run queen earlier on. I found, look, as a stage manager, what do we love to do? We love to put the show together, and once you get through tech, it's sort of like a denouement. You're sort of like announce the maintenance of the show. And for some reason, I really get charged out of maintaining the show. I really do. I love teching, don't get me wrong, because that is what we do. We get that rush from that, and when you can get everything to move exactly the way it's supposed to and land the way it's supposed to, the accomplishment of that is so great. But, when you're looking for work and things are already up and running, I have found, what I find is I love coming at it from the opposite angle. I come from it like wonder why they did this way. And so then to have to like piece it together backwards is fascinating to me, number one. But number two, I love the maintenance of it. I love putting new people in. I feel one of my strongest traits is that I love, taking on that challenge of trying to allow the performer to feel like they're bringing themselves to something that's already been created. That's a really fine technical line to deal with, and a lot of it's not easy. It's not easy to make somebody who's coming in to replace feel like it's their role. But I love that challenge. I also love the challenge of maintenance in terms of technical. I love working with the crew. So for me, especially on Wicked, when you say, what's kept you here so long, it is all of that changeover. It's it is, some people say it's the same show, same things happen all the time. Yes, I mean, hopefully the same show will happen every night. That's our goal, but it is not the same thing every night in terms of like what's going on back here, what do we have developing, and this show in particular is fascinating because it's become such a sort of phenomenon that I'm fascinated by the fact that the longevity of this because of the story it tells. There is a lot of outside influence that we have also. And so that's also a wonderful challenge. Like our company manager is very involved in a lot of different projects that mean a lot in terms of what the show itself represents. So it's I don't know. What keeps me going here is basically bottom line is the show itself. It's the people in the building, and those people that I work so closely with in the creative departments, the technical departments. It's just a good group of people who are really good at what they do, and I can't honestly believe that 9 years have gone by. I can't. It does not feel like that at all. And sometimes I'm looking around and I'm going, oh my God, it really has been 9 years because there's so-and-so and they've been in the show for 9 years. Or I think here comes a new person who could be my grandchild at their age. Do you know what I mean? And I'm like, here we go again. You know what I mean? So it's fascinating, but that's really sort of what keeps me motivated.
And you touched upon how Wicked has kind of become a phenomenon. How do you deal with that idea that the show is a phenomenon and there is a cult following, really, behind the show?
Well, for the stage manager, we're fortunate, again, because, our general management team and our company manager really have a lot to deal with in terms of, between social media, which is a brand new thing, and dealing with, wild and crazy fans, they really take that on themselves. The stage managers don't really have a lot to do with this. Basically, we're thankful. Look, it's 9 years, and when we walk out of that stage door, there are still people barricaded to get autographs and say hello, and, what more can you ask for? After 9 years, there are still people standing out there. And every night, a standing ovation. I get goosebumps when, the show starts and we get hoops and hollers as soon as she starts talking. That's the kind of thing where you go, the phenomenon of it is that it's the appeal to the audience and these people that keep coming back, thank goodness, but we also get new influxes of people constantly, which I really believe is what, that's really what keeps us going, right? If we had, I'm just floored. We came into our, a couple weeks ago, we had our 1 millionth patron came to the show.
Oh my God.
And so when you think of that, you go, wow, that's incredible. And in terms of what you're saying, with the fan base, they've got that so, we do get individual letters every once in a while, and we'll answer them or we'll do that sort of thing. But really, the general manager of company management, I think marketing, they take care of a lot of that stuff. So they're more, that would be, I wouldn't even venture to guess what they deal with daily, but I'm sure it's huge.
With this long run, how do you keep morale up in the building?
That's a good question. the reason I laugh about that is because, like, I might be thinking morale's up and everything is great, and all of a sudden, like, whack, no, it ain't so. So that's one of those ones where I go, okay, what's going on in the building? Basically, look, I run from the premise that we're all professionals. We have a job to do. When we come into the building, let's put our day outside that door and come in and let's have fun and do our 3 hours that we're required to be here. Now, bottom line is, everybody has lives, everybody's got whatever they've got, and they've got their stuff that's going on in their lives, and of course, everyone is affected by everyone else in the building. I would say, just in terms of morale, look, I feel like because we're professionals, we really don't have to worry about that so much. I mean, I think people really understand that, look, when you get here, however you're feeling is what the audience is going to see. And what you're paid to be feeling is XYZ during the course of the night. And I really do believe that most, if not all of us, accomplish that. But there are going to be moments, or there are going to be times, especially around holidays, or, when we have maybe more shows in a row than we've normally had. And so what we'll do in terms of trying to, sort of distract one from realizing how long they've actually been in the building over the course of 5 days, we do a lot of fun game type things, and we do a lot of, I'm trying to think of what you would call them, scavenger hunt kind of things. We'll do 1 or 2 of those a year, and we try to do sort of things that will bring people together and remind them why we're here. But that will also make people realize, look, everybody cares, everybody knows, and we're just going to try and, we're going to try and get through this all together. But I do have to say, just in terms of that, again, which is another reason why I have found it almost easy to remain here this long, is that we do have, the people within the building have such a great, energy and a great perspective on this. Everybody is so thankful for this. We know that we've got longevity, security. Do you know what I mean? So people, knock wood. People don't, that's not something that you find in the theater. So people are very aware of it, and I think that they don't take it for granted. And so we really rarely have any kind of a morale problem that I would say, oh God, we've got to get the producer over here, we're in a morale problem. Nothing like that at all. I mean, and I'm also, I try to keep my finger on the pulse, and if I feel like something's going askew, I'll talk to people. I'll pull them aside and say, look, what's going on? So I think that, and so will the other stage managers, the company managers aware of that, the dance captains, so I feel like just in keeping, I wouldn't say that I'm the keeper of the morale. I really wouldn't. I don't want to take credit for something that I really feel like the 50, 60, 70 people in this building deal with and take care of. We sort of do it all together.
And speaking of that, I know you talked about last time how you keep in mind how many hours this crew has worked with all of the maintenance calls and the understudy rehearsals. Talk to me about how, as you're maintaining the show, you consider everyone's schedules as well. Yeah,
that's probably the toughest part of the job. It really is, because I am very aware of time, and as most stage managers are, but I'm also very aware of everyone's time. And one of the things everybody who knows me knows is, if you are not on time, you will be reprimanded. I'm big on that. I'm not 1, 2, 3 strikes, you're out. If you are late, or you are, or there's some problem, and we cannot start at the call time, then there are consequences that will be paid for that. And the reason that I'm that way is because, just like from an actor's perspective, to put someone into a show, you have to do XYZ. You've got to have a rehearsal pianist, you've probably got dance captains, and you probably have some crew members. So now we're not only affecting 1 or 2 people, we're affecting at least 5. And if they can all be on time, then everybody needs to be on time. So I'm a big, big stickler with that. I also am very aware of exhaustion and exhausting people. And, look, the more the crew is in here, the more likely it is that they're going to be tired. And our crew is quite exceptional in that they do not call out. They are very dedicated to what they do. And so I'm very aware of that. And when I got here, one of the things that I try to do as much as possible, if we can, is I do a lot of continuity hour rehearsal. If I only need, if we're putting someone in the show who's done one of our companies before, I don't need to bring everybody in for 4 hours that afternoon to run the show. That's not productive. What's the point of that? It's just exhausting everyone. So if I've got somebody new who's going to do the show and I know that they need, 4 or 5 set pieces, and I know I can do that in 45 minutes, why am I going to do a 4-hour call? And I know that the crew has been very vocal on how appreciative they are of that. So they know that I work with them. But I also will not sacrifice an actor's safety by thinking, the crew's been in 4 times this week. We know we can't do that either. So we've got a really good, at least I think we do, a very good communication. I have a great communication with my crew heads where we try to figure out what is the most efficient way to not waste people's times, especially if we have to do 3 or 4 work calls over the next month. And how can we, work around something? So, again, I'm always harping on this too, but communicate. Before I start a rehearsal schedule during the week, I call or talk to most every head and just say, what's on your schedule this week? And now we've got a routine going where I know when we need electric lamp change. I know when we need to have, a chain motor call. I know when we need to have this fixed, that fixed, or maintenance, or this, whatever. So we all know this ahead of time, and we've got our calendars going. And then if I know we're going to have an actor who gave notice, I immediately talk to them and say, okay, look, this is what I think I'm going to need for this person. Can you move your work call? Can we do it in some way where everybody's not going to be exhausted? But don't get me wrong, there are those times when sometimes we're in here Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday with crew and with everybody, and we're working away because we've got to get 6 or 7 people into a show.
Also with crew hours, when you got here, you asked management if you could swing out actors so they could watch the show. Just talk about why you think that's important.
Yeah, when I got here, excuse me, there were still quite a few original company members, and there were people who had been here maybe 2 or 3 years and that sort of thing. And the other thing I noticed in learning the show itself, everybody comes with an axe that they want to grind, and I have to decide at that point, especially when you're coming into a show like this, you have to decide what fires are the most important to put out and what can I leave go. One of the things that became very evident to me was that people had not seen the show in a long time, or maybe never. And that, you have to have some perspective on what you're doing. And so in talking to management, they were like, yeah, we could probably do that. And they have been terrific in that way, because of course what that means is, we have to pay a sub to come in, especially for crew people, to watch the show. But what that has done, you want to talk about boosting morale, it's incredible, because people come back and they go, I had forgotten, I had not witnessed, I can't believe these people are incredible, I can't believe this, I'm so proud to be a part of this. You get this kind of feedback, and what it does is it rejuvenates people. And so we try to rotate the actors out. What I try to do with the actors is that if we're in 16 in a row, management has been great about this. If we're doing 16 shows in a row, I try to rotate everybody out once to see the show during that time. So now what that means is you've not done 16 in a row. Even though you're here, you haven't had to perform 16. And that has worked out really, really well. And then I would say maybe once every couple years we have rotated. We rotate the wardrobe crew, and we rotate our roadies out. So it's worked out really well. I
just, in quotes down here, I have the campaign of fun.
Oh, yeah, that was started before I got here. I don't know. That was one of the old stage managers, I think before my time, started that. And that was one of those situations that was a morale booster. And so they would do things periodically. And one of the things that they did when I got here was they would theme understudy rehearsals. So it would be like everybody's going to be, we're going to do like 60s understudy rehearsal. So everyone would come dressed up like hippies into the understudy rehearsal. So I let this go 4 or 5 times, and then I was like, I can't anymore, because to me what happened is with an understudy rehearsal, it's the only time that you're really actually allowing this person to run the whole show in a character, and you've got to know whether they're doing it correctly and whether they can do it. And so to add an element of like, this isn't really that important, really was one of those things where I was like, okay, you guys, I hate to be like a Scrooge, but we're not going to do themed understudy rehearsals anymore. But along those lines, I don't know what other things they did for Campaign for Fun, but that was around before my time.
So with the 9 years, I'm guessing that you've had different assistants and subs and people working for you. So what do you look for when you're assembling a team and hiring assistants?
Well, for anybody who tells you differently is lying. It is totally personality. It's, for me, if somebody has credits and they come in, it's not about whether they're going to be able to call their deck. It really isn't. At this level, when you're interviewing people, most everybody has those credits. But it's a personality situation, It's who do I want around me? Who knows how I work? Who, that sort of thing. And so for me, what I look for is in assembling a team, when you're saying assembling a team, it's kind of different than when you're replacing. Because when you're assembling a team, you definitely want you want the strengths of technical to make sure somebody has technical strength, somebody who has like personality strength, depending on who's in your show, whether they've dealt with stars before. There are a number of issues that go into that kind of a thing. When you're dealing with a long run and you're replacing people, you've got the advantage of hiring subs, so you can figure out what their personalities are and how well they call a show. That, to me, is so much easier than when you're first assembling, because it's a crapshoot. You take recommendations from your colleagues. You might have heard about somebody that you thought you wanted to work with, and you bring them in and maybe you try them. It's a crapshoot when you're first putting shows together, and that's why I really find most PSMs have one person that they always take with them. You'll usually find a team, like a PSM and a first, because once you have established that kind of a relationship with a first, then everything else sort of falls into place. But that's tough. It's a tough, sometimes I really like to sort of like go out there and say, let's just try this person, and then there's other times when I'm like, no, I need such and such for this. So in terms of what you look for, I really believe it all boils down to personality. It's, who's going to get along with who? Are these people going to, support you? Will they have your back? Are you going to have their back? That kind of stuff. I think that's what you're looking for, and there's no guarantee.
Also with hiring, not really hiring, but so Wicked is one of the only shows that has an internship program. Do you want to talk a little bit about the stage management internship program?
Listen, the internship program is very informal, and quite frankly, this is something that, it's like a Mary Beth Abel original. When I was doing Les Miserables, I started an internship program basically because of what we were just talking about. We had so many companies going, and everybody had an opinion on who the stage managers should be on these companies, and we would go through people and things wouldn't work out or something would work out really well. And so what we started doing was I started this internship program to train stage managers on the way that company worked. And so we would hire interns and eventually promote them into stage management positions. Not to say that we did not also hire people who were already established. We did. But this was a sure way of getting someone in that would know how the organization ran. That's basically how it started. When I got here and I realized I was on a long run again, and I thought, what can we do? I try to remember, I think we got a letter. We did. We got a letter from a gal who was at Columbia in their undergrad program, and she was interested in stage managing. And so she had written, I think, to one of our producers, and the producer forwarded the letter over here, and she wondered if we had an internship program. And I spoke with the company manager, and I said, look, I've done this before, and I would love to do this. I said, let me talk to the rest of the stage managers, but how do you guys feel about this? And so we all decided, let's try it. And we were very fortunate. We got this gal. I think she came in for 3 or 4 months. She was excellent. And from that is how we established, let's do this. Because we found, again, that it was an advantage not only for the intern, but it was an advantage for us. It was, they could pick up slack that we didn't have time to do. Or, if something happened during a show, they were able to deal with it, and we didn't lose a stage manager. So it's become, it's now become one of these things where people know about it, and they, and I interview. I mean, I start my interviews in May for 2018. We're already booked through 2017. So it is, I don't know if it's the only one on Broadway. I think it is, but I think it's also because it's not an easy thing to do either. I mean, you have to, we've talked a lot about it, because, you have to dedicate yourself to not only doing the show, but also knowing that someone is watching every move you make. And so and what do you want this person to learn? And you've got to be available to answer questions. And you've got to be available to also critique. So it's not an easy job to do this, but we really enjoy it. So as long as we're enjoying it, we'll continue doing it.
And riffing off of the internship program, how did you get into teaching?
Fascinating again. Here, talk about networking. When I was doing Les Mis, there was an associate company manager at one point who I had not seen or spoken to in years. And I get a phone call from him, and he is up at Columbia working in the, I guess it was the producing general management. He was the head of that department. And he said to me, hey, he goes, I thought of you. We're losing somebody, and they need somebody to cover a semester, da-da-da-da-da. And I had no idea. And I'm like, what would I possibly teach? And he was like, oh, come on, you can come up with something. And so I said, well, send me a syllabus of what this was before. And they couldn't find one on file, and they couldn't find this, and they couldn't find that. And I was like, well, I don't know what to do. And I think it was actually Peter Lawrence had taught at one point there. And somebody said to me, maybe Peter would have a syllabus. And fortunately, he did. And so when I looked at his syllabus, I went, oh, okay, I think I can sort of figure out what I might be able to do. And so I called Steve Jacobson back and said, okay, I guess I can try to do this. So I did the first year and really enjoyed it. I did the second year and really enjoyed it. But I found there was a total disconnect. Like, nobody ever called me, nobody asked me any questions. I was just teaching this class, and that's how it would happen. And then the third year I was, I think it was when Michael Passaro came in. And since then it's great because there's at least communication with the other. We know what everybody else is doing. So I was sort of working off in like a cloud of my own there for a while. And then, but the last 3 years since Michael's been head, it's been very productive.
I'm looking through my notes, but you teach a class called Broadway Basics.
I do. And this came through one of my colleagues here at Wicked, and she was teaching in the city, and I had just started at Columbia, and one of the things we were commiserating about how, some of the some lack of just basic technical, basic theatrical terminology and the way you run things, how this was lacking. And I was teaching at a grad level when she was teaching at a undergrad level, and I said to her, the idea that these kids are spending money on a graduate degree in stage management, I said, for some reason, for me, that was just such a foreign concept. Because when I got into the business, there weren't even any stage management programs. But I said to her, what we need to do? We need to grab kids who think they want to do this and explain to them exactly what it really entails. And so we sat down for weeks on end, and we just developed what we thought was a program, and we did a mass mailing to all the high schools in the tri-state area, and we got response. And so we did our first one, I think it was around 5 years ago in the summer, and we had 18 or 25 kids who we still to this day keep in touch with. Some of them are in theater programs, some of them have gone on to do other things, but that has developed, and we're actually doing a class this summer again. We had our first, what we were really excited about this year is that we actually had a college brought us out. We were at Brigham Young University a few months ago, and we taught a 2-day intensive to them. And so this developed because we wanted, if a kid really wants to do this, they need to know what it entails and what it's all about before they spend all of this money on conservatory stage management undergrad and then going to grad school. And we feel really good about it because we've really accomplished quite a few success stories in both ways. In kids discovering that's really not what they wanted to do, and they found their area maybe in some other technical part of theater, and then we found others who have really moved on to be good stage managers. So we're very excited about it, and I love doing it. It's one of my favorite things. We do it 2 or 3 times a year.
And what is some advice you want to give to younger stage managers out there?
The thing that I think about stage managing that gets lost kind of in the shuffle is that that you have to humble yourself to the piece. And what I mean by that is, yes, you are the leader, and yes, you are the one who has to be able to control and call and really guide everything. But what I find too often than not is that the ego becomes becomes distorted. And yes, you are the leader, but you have to make sure that you are always a collaborative leader, because that's when things start to fall by the wayside. If you sort of become too egomaniacal about being the leader of the group, that's when trouble sets in, because you start to rise above things, and things don't what is important becomes a sort of distorted. And that's why I remember a director I worked for one time. We were in the middle of a production meeting, and somebody asked him a question, and he looked at all of us and he said, "You guys are the professionals. I trust you. That's why you were hired. So go ahead and make the decision. I don't need to be involved in every single decision." And I remember the penny dropped for me, and I went, "That's collaboration. That's what we have to do." And so for me, it's taking a step back from the ego and realizing that you are the facilitator and you are the collaborator and you are the one who communicates everything, and that's necessary, but you also have to be really wide open to all of that. Otherwise, you're going to end up, there'll be faults and cracks that develop.
I could talk to you for hours, but as our time is wrapping up, Is there anything else you want to say about your life, your career, stage management in general?
Look, I just think that for me, being able to do this as a career and really like making a living at this for 35 years is something I would have never ever dreamed could have ever happened. I feel like this is a hobby that like has provided me with like an incredible life, and I just I'm so thankful. I feel so blessed in it, and you know, even though I sit on shows for a long time, I always look forward to the next thing that I'm going to do.
All right.
Thank you, Rachel.
Thank you, MB.